Hello, my name is Dylan Duke, and today I will be talking about initial interactions and attractions, a coming together stage from the interpersonal communications textbook. According to psychiatrist Leonard Zunin, the first 4 minutes of interaction with a stranger may well be the most crucial time in determining whether an encounter or relationship will blossom or die. In our society, first impressions matter. This is why the lasting first impression is a term in our culture, and trying to handle it might be difficult. So today, we're going to talk about the impulses that bring people together, first impressions, and our perceptions of others. There are four impulses that drive people together, and they are the impulse to receive stimulation, the impulse to express experiences, the impulse to assert oneself, and finally, the impulse to enhance enjoyment of certain activities. Now, while these impulses drive us to act in a certain way, there might be outside circumstances that will facilitate or impede with these interactions. Having something in common with someone whom you are trying to interact with is a huge pro if the interaction is going to go well. This might be a common sports team or maybe a mutual friend who has set up this interaction. But ultimately, having a similarity with someone whom we have these impulses about is going to make the initial interaction much more comfortable and much more easier to talk about certain ideas. Before the interaction even begins, however, people like to size up the other person, and not necessarily their actual height and weight, but they want to know as much as they can about someone before an interaction occurs. In the same way that one might study for a test, people want to know as much as they can about someone before they engage in dialogue with them. Whatever is known before dialogue starts will start the conversation, but as new information is revealed through the interaction, that new data will guide the dialogue. A study by Meal and Duck showed that the most common strategies people use to learn about the other are indirect questions, observing the other's behavior, and reciprocal self-disclosure. Ultimately, you will not learn everything about someone after one night at the bar, or maybe even after decades of marriage, you're learning stuff about your partner that you didn't know about. This is because first impressions, they are lasting, but ultimately, they're only first impressions. We tend to assume certain things off of these first impressions, or maybe it's because while the initial interaction was happening, we were given false information. Bach and Deutsch said that people do this in order to seem more pleasurable and maybe even encourage further interactions. They used the example of this couple. Doug was surprised to learn that his now girlfriend actually did not like hiking when one of their first dates was going hiking. Helen lied about enjoying hiking so that way she could hang out with Doug, and thus that encouraged further interactions. The perceptions that we have of others, like Doug thinking that Helen actually enjoyed hiking, are different than what the actual person enjoys or who they are like. One of the reasons why we might have different perceptions of people, besides them giving false information, is the idea of selective perception. Selective perception is when somebody decides to see or not see obvious information based on their own needs or desires. Returning to our example of Helen and Doug, perhaps Doug had selective perception of Helen because he always thought that she enjoyed hiking, yet Helen probably never brought it up to him that they should go hiking because Doug had this perfect picture in his head of Helen enjoying hiking. Anyways, let's wrap up. Initial interactions and attractions, a coming together stage of the interpersonal communications textbook, features a lot of different ideas, and some of these ideas being the impulses that bring people together, first impressions, and the perceptions that we have of others. If I had learned one thing in studying interpersonal communication this semester that I can see using in my own life, it would be the idea of selective perception, because hopefully I can recognize people doing it as well as myself doing it in the future. Thank you very much.